the Houston standards. It's quite cold. But I'm glad you are here tonight. We're doing a number of these town halls throughout the 18th Congressional District. We had one last Tuesday. It was a telephone town hall. And, you know, I was surprised. We had over 5,000 people on that telephone town hall. If I had known, Superintendent, the weather was going to be this cold, I think we probably would have done another telephone town hall where people can be right there in their homes and yet participate and get the information that we need. But I wanted to have this one here. I was talking with the superintendent of the Spring Independent School District maybe a couple of weeks ago about doing a telephone town hall out in this area. We thought it was important to provide people with information as much as possible. This is one of those weeks where the members of Congress are in the district. We're in DC roughly 3 weeks out of 4. I do come back every weekend, but this week, Monday through Friday, I am in the district. So we are trying to meet people where they are and let people know what's happening in DC. And I don't have to tell you, a lot of things are happening in DC. But before I get started, Superintendent, did you just want to come and say hello to everybody? Because we're in spring, and we're working collaboratively with Spring and Dr.
Thank you, Congressman, and definitely just welcome to Spring ISD. We are definitely honored that our facility has been chosen to host this event. And as you said, Congressman, we just want to be able to provide information to our community. And so we are very appreciative of having all these people here to be able to provide that information and most importantly, to share it out. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. Please give it up to Dr. I had the privilege of attending the State of the District presentation, and it was outstanding. And the focus were on the students. And let me tell you, we have students who are doing extremely well in Spring Independent School District and representing us all extremely well and are doing some tremendous things. So I'm honored to be here. In fact, one of the 3 district offices will be right here in Spring, working in collaboration with Spring Independent School District. So I appreciate all of that. In terms of what's happening in DC, we got started for Congress on January the 3rd. President was sworn in on January the 20th. And we've been dealing with a slew of executive orders. And that's an understatement. I think at this point in time, there probably have been more than 60 executive orders signed by the president. And to give you some comparison, President Biden was in office for 4 years. There were 77 executive orders in 4 years. President Trump has been in for a little less than a month. And already we are facing 60 executive orders, with more coming. One of the ones that, well, there are a few that several concerned with, and he's working collaboratively with Elon Musk and his team, and Elon Musk has gone to the United States Treasury, which processes about $6 trillion a year. It houses your information, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, taxpayers' information. And the plan is to get a hold of that information. Now, what they intend to do with it, we simply do not know. How it's being used, we do not know. The people have not been vetted in any significant way. And for now, a federal judge has put a hold on that information. How long it will last, we do not know. But now they're also seeking to get information from the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. That too has your Social Security, your taxpayer information, your personal confidential information. We're very concerned about that. Now, members in Congress have responded with the Taxpayer Data Protection Act. And please make a note of that. The Taxpayer Data Protection Act. And what it does, it safeguards your information from any person or persons who have not been fully vetted, so that your personal, private information remains your information and cannot be abused. That bill was found more than a week ago. I am co-sponsoring that bill. It's the Taxpayer Data Information Act. Please call people in DC, the White House, people in Congress, Democrats and Republicans, okay? Because it really needs to be bipartisan support. Because I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't think anyone anticipated someone getting their personal, private, confidential information. Okay, so please encourage the members of Congress to support the Taxpayer Data Information Act. There's another one that has been filed, and this is in reference to ICE federal officials showing up at schools, hospitals, churches. There was a time that people, ICE and others, would not be going to schools, churches, and hospitals, or even the courts. But now, with the signing of the executive order, they have been cleared to go to schools, churches, hospitals. So there's another bill that's been found that is, and I have to get the name of it, that essentially says those institutions will be off limits. Schools, churches, hospitals, and you'll be hearing more about that. So those are two bills that's important for you to reach out and talk to people about. At the same time, I can't cover all 60, but I do want to talk about the Department of Education, because that touches Spring, Houston, Aldine, you name it, every school district in the United States. And on the Department of Education, the attempt is, number one, to shut it down. Number two, you can't shut it down, to significantly reduce it. I don't have to tell many of you the importance of the Department of Education for Title I programs, for Title I, leveling the playing field for students where there are economic disparities, low-income students. Department of Education provides that added assistance. It doesn't take away money coming from the state, but it adds to it and provides those kids with the educational equity that they rightfully deserve. Title I is critically important. If you try to shut down the Department of Education or significantly lower that, then you are directly touching on school kids across the country. And quite frankly, that's our future. So please, if you believe that the Department of Education should remain intact, please contact Democrats and Republicans alike, the White House, and say to them, we do not want you to dismantle the Department of Education. That's very, very important. And then on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Disappointing, but an all-out assault on anything dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, any federal employee that has been in these departments, advancing these strategies, those employees have been put on hold. Those programs at the federal level have been shut down. Okay? And that is across the board. So when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is under attack. Now let me be very, very clear. Just because you may be diverse, just because you may be African American, Hispanic, Asian, woman, male, veteran, people with disabilities, you have a right to be included in the process. Okay? It's about access to equal opportunity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion does not mean that you are incompetent, not capable at all. It is consistent with the executive order that President Lyndon Baines Johnson issued in 1964. And the order that he signed in September of 1964 said everyone has a right to equal opportunity in procurement, employment, training, recruitment. He said everyone. And for 60 years, that executive order by President Johnson has remained in place through 5 Republican presidents. 5. Each one of them honored that executive order. But since January the 20th, that executive order has been rescinded. So it's important, especially for our kids, to know that you don't have to look the same. You don't have to have the same gender. You can speak different languages. You can come from different places. But this is home. If you are here, this is home. And every one of our kids deserves to have the opportunity to succeed and do well. And when they do well, and when they succeed, and they get a job, they have a right to that job or those opportunities. So I know there's a lot of conversation on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but this is one that as your congressperson, I'm going to continue to resist efforts to eliminate, wipe out, or try to put a negative spin on diversity, equity, and inclusion. For 8 years I was mayor, I said to people, you can be diverse, separate, segregated, and apart. Or you can be diverse and inclusive at the same time. And it's not enough to be diverse. It's important to be inclusive. And when you look around in this room, you see that diversity in full display. So we're working on that. And the list goes on and on and on. There have been a number of executive orders dealing with immigration, mass deportation, birthright. Now, I've been a lawyer for 40 years, and we got a lawyer here tonight. If you were born in this country, I don't care how you got here, I don't care the reasons that brought you here. If you are born in this country, you are an American citizen. That is embedded within our Constitution. That's in the Constitution. I don't care how you got here. I don't care when you got here. I don't care who brought you here. If you were born in this country, you are a 100% American citizen. That's being challenged. federal judges, but that on hold. Because most professors, most law schools would tell you that's a fundamental right. But it's being challenged. And I suspect they want to get that case up to the United States Supreme Court. Okay? But that's a fundamental right. At the same time, these executive orders have created a lot of apprehension, a lot of fear, nervousness within our country. Because initially, the focus was supposed to be people here, undocumented, who have created serious felony crimes. Those were supposed to be the targets. But that's not the case. Okay? There are many people who are here, undocumented, but are being rounded up. In Chicago, an individual grandfather who had been in this country for 30 years got a knock at the door and was taken away from his family. One of the reasons why we're holding these town hall meetings, it's important for people to know their rights, whether you're lawfully or whether you're undocumented. Because the reality is, you just can't look at somebody and say, okay, you're here illegally. 25% of people who live in Houston come from outside of the United States. We are a global area and one of the most diverse in the country. So people need to know their rights. And there are parents who are not sending their kids to school because they don't know what will happen when they go to school. There are people who are not going to work because they are fearful. There are people who get sick and not going to the doctor, to the hospital. Literally, as your congressperson, and if you live in the 18th Congressional District, from the East End, the South part of downtown, the Heights, Independent Heights, Acres Home, the Northeast, Spring, Humble, I am your congressperson. I am your congressperson. And whether you're here or not here, please let people know I am your congressperson. I want you to go to school. I want you to go to work. If you get sick, I want you to go to the hospital. And the Harris County Hospital District is not going to ask you for your personal information. In fact, you don't even have to say anything. But the Harris County Hospital District will treat you for your illness. So go to school, go to work, go to the hospital. And if by chance something should happen, you call your congressperson, Sylvester Turner of the 18th District. And we're not fighting alone. Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, Congressman Al Green, Lizzie Fletcher are all standing with you. But that's important. Tonight you're going to hear from Cesar Espinosa, the head of Fiel. Everybody knows Cesar. He's been out there on the front lines fighting on these issues. He and I worked together for many years, and we continue to work together. I asked Cesar to come here because I want him to speak on knowing your rights, okay? And people need to know. Somebody knock at your door, you don't need to answer the door. You don't have to, okay? If someone shows up at your school, teachers need to refer them to the principal or to the superintendent. Okay? And I want teachers to teach their students. Let me say this one more time. In one school up on the north, a teacher contacted ICE and said, you need to come and take a look at these students. They were her students. I want teachers to teach, not be ICE. Teach. Just do your job. And if somebody come knocking at your door, refer them to the principal or to the superintendent. Okay? If we do that, then we'll continue to have an inclusive society where everyone is a part. Now, let me be clear. I want the border secure. And I would work with any person, president, the Congress members, to secure the borders. Okay. No problem with that. For people who have committed serious felonies, okay, we can work on that front. But for people who have come to this country for an opportunity, for people who are law-abiding, and 40% of construction workers in this country, okay, are undocumented. 40%. Can you imagine if they're not constructing homes, the cost of your home goes up? 60% of the people working on these farms are undocumented. You shut them out, your fruit, vegetables, produce, you name it, price is going up. And with all of these executive orders that have been filed, the cost of eggs have shot up. You go to the grocery store, you're paying more now than you did a few weeks ago. Okay? Food prices have not come down. Housing prices have not come down. And there's an attempt to eliminate the premiums on the Affordable Care Act. Your health care costs are subject to going up. For people with disabilities, women having babies, for loved ones in nursing homes, all of those programs are paid for by Medicaid. And the budget proposed, unfortunately, by Republicans, are slashing that budget. And the question is why? It's not for efficiency. We can all be for efficiency. It's not to eliminate fraud and waste. We all want to eliminate fraud and waste. But in order to pay for the tax breaks, the tax cuts, for an Elon Musk and others who are doing very well, they need to reach a goal of $4.7 trillion. That means they need to reduce the cost of what the federal government pays in order to reach that 4.7 trillion. Their goal, when you see federal employees being laid off, dismantling the Department of Education, looking at people's personal information, they're trying to reach that goal of 4.7 trillion in order to take care or pay for a tax cut for people who are doing extremely well. And I'm close to this and brings this up. You tell me why an Elon Musk would have access for your information, your personal information, when he refuses to fill out a personal financial statement. I have to fill out a detailed one. I don't have nearly what he has. But in order for me to remain in Congress, I have to fill out a personal financial statement. The man who's going through your records and have access to your records refuses to disclose his financial information. He refuses, but he has yours. Now you tell me how that makes sense. So the point that I want to make, though, I went to Congress to work on your behalf and to work with anyone to benefit the American people. Democrat, Republican, President Trump, doesn't matter. But there are certain lines that we should not cross. So now let me bring up Cesar Espinosa, who has been a champion for people across the board, been on the front lines, marched, demonstrated, you name it, to talk about knowing your rights. Cesar.
Thank you, Congressman Turner. My name is Cesar Espinosa. I'm Executive Director of Fiel. Fiel is the largest immigrant-led civil rights organization now in the state of Texas. But first, I want to tell you why it is that I do what I do. I am a first-generation immigrant from Mexico City, Mexico. My family brought me here when I was this much old, this much tall, and still pretty wide, but a lot shorter then. And they brought me here. We came to the United States, and they brought me here to Houston. I was in Houston. I started at Warden Elementary, and then there was an awkward year in Ohio that we don't really talk about, where we came back. There was 1 year that we spent in Ohio, and then we came back. Went to schools in Southwest Houston, including Cunningham Elementary. Then I went to the Vanguard program at Jing Long Middle School. Then I went to a small high school called Michael E. DeBakey High School for All Professions, where I graduated the top 15% of my class, missed one question on my SAT, and got accepted into a bunch of Ivy Leagues. But at that time, at 18 years old, I happened to be undocumented. And in 2004, talking about not having papers was a big no-no. My mom always told us, never tell anybody that you don't have papers, because we don't know if somebody's gonna call ICE on us or things like that. Also growing up, my mom used to have do y'all remember those old address books? The ones that still have the A's and the B's and all that stuff? Well, and she used to have a book like that. Yeah, some of the young people are here I've never heard of that. But for us more seasoned folk, we used to have one of those, and in the back page, all the way in the back, my mom would have all the emergency contacts of who we were supposed to call in case we came home one day and mom and dad weren't home. And this was when I was 8, 9 years old. I remember having these conversations. So fast forward to sometime in 2007, we began with what we thought was going to be a small club of students at U of H and at Lee High School, which is now Wisdom High School in Southwest Houston. And what began as a small club of 5 or 10 students trying to get access to higher ed for other undocumented youth quickly grew into what it is now today, which is we're an organization that has about 60,000 members in the greater Houston area. We work on immigration policy at the local, state, and at the federal level, advising on what community needs are. We do disaster recovery, you name it. And we have attorneys on staff that help people file for immigration paperwork at low cost or no cost to them. Now, in the last 17 years that I've been at the head of Fiel, and definitely in the last 33 years that I have been here in the US, people always ask me, why don't you just do it the right way? Why didn't you just come the right way? Why didn't you just file your paperwork? Even one time I was in Austin and a state rep, I won't say her name, but a state rep said, she turns around and looks at me and she says, I can't believe you like being illegal. You should just go file your paperwork. And I'm like, if I could, I would, right? I was here in the United States up until the age of 27 without no ID, no license, nothing. At the age of 27 in 2012 under President Obama, we got the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which was an executive order that granted temporary relief for young people who qualified for it. I became a DACA recipient in 2012, and up to 2012, up until last year, I was a DACA recipient. And here's where the story changes. So 4 years ago, I met the love of my life, and she happened to be a U.S. citizen. And she said, well, let's fix your papers. We got married. We didn't get married for my papers. We got married for real. And then she told me for 3 years, we should fix your papers. We should fix your papers. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. I want to wait till something else happens, till we get immigration reform. That was my idealistic train of thought, right? But we have a son, and having to explain to my son that maybe one day he was going to come home and Papi was not going to be there was one of the hardest days of my life. So it was at that time, 2 years ago, that I said, you know what? I have the opportunity to adjust my status, and I did through immigration law. And after 33 years of being in this country without documents, last year, in March of last year, I finally became a legal permanent resident. And I was able to. So it took a little while. I am part of a mixed status family. That's the other misconception. People are like, well, you have relatives, like Congressman Turner said, about a quarter of Houstonians are not born in the United States. 1.3 million of us live in mixed status families, and 600,000 of us are undocumented. And I was part of the 1.3 million families or folks that live here in the Houston area, where my brother and my mom were U.S. citizens. I have still family members who are undocumented. Some of them are still on their DACA. And if my brother were to petition for me today, how long do you think it'll take for immigration to say that is your brother? Anybody want to guess? Take a wild guess.
14 years.
5 years.
14 years.
Times 4. It's 22 years. Right now, immigration is working on cases from 2001, 2002, approximately. So I'm about to be, can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I'm about to be 40 years old this year. And if I still was undocumented and I wanted to do the legal thing and have my brother petition for me, it would take 22 years for me to get a letter from immigration and say, congratulations, you are your brother's brother. You can go on to step number 2. And because I was here unlawfully after I turned 18, even though I came to no fault of my own, I would have to go through the bar process. So I would have to go back to Mexico to Ciudad Juarez, go in front of an immigration judge over there. And because I accrued unlawful status, I would at least get a 2-year penalty, a 2 to 10 year penalty from coming back. So if everything was done for me today, I would get that interview when I'm 62. And best case scenario, I would be back when I'm 64. Worst case scenario, when I'm 72, as a green card holder under that process. So the reason why I explain that is because it's not, immigration is one of the hardest laws out there after tax law. It's actually considered one of the most complicated laws after tax law. So where are we today? I'm glad we're here for 6 hours so I can explain to you. No, I'm just kidding. We are in a very complex situation right now. As Congressman Turner said, a lot of people are afraid. And part of the reason why they're afraid is because of these things, of TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, all these things going around, saying that there's massive raids happening and things like that. And so we want to clarify some of the things that are happening and some of the things that are not happening. So one of the things that is not happening right now is there hasn't been a massive raid. As Congressman Turner pointed out and other people have pointed out, they are targeted operations right now. So what's happening right now is they're going after people who may already have had previous orders of deportation or are set to be deported or missed a court date, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, though, they are picking up what they are calling collateral damage. So if people don't know their rights, if people answer the door without asking who it is or why they're there or if they have a warrant or anything like that, then unfortunately they are picking people up. 50% of people being detained right now are collateral damage. So they're not the hardened criminals, they're not the people that are from these gangs or anything like they're collateral damage. Out of the other 50%, there's only a small percentage of them that actually are a criminal element. Majority of people are people that are just have fallen out of the civil immigration code and may have prior orders of deportation or things like that. The other thing that's happening is that this is already having an impact in our Houston economy. If you have been, like we have, Align and I travel around the city doing Know Your Rights presentations, and we have to stop to eat, right? And we have our favorite spots that we go to. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is a lot of these spots are empty because people are being more tight with their money just because the economy is the way it is. But also, a lot of people in our community are saying we don't want to overspend. We want to save a lot of money in case we get detained. We can have at least have something to fall back on. So the other thing that's also happened is we've gotten calls from certain schools that sometimes there's days where they're missing 100 to 150 students. And that's partially because people are afraid to go out, but also because there's executive orders or things that have been passed that are saying that that ICE can now go into schools. Fortunately, we've talked to many school districts, and they are putting plans in motion to keep kids safe at school. Our recommendation to all parents, we echo what the Congressman said, please send your kids to school. Number one, because we don't want your kid to fall behind. Number two, is we want to make sure that our public system stays healthy by having kids in school doing what they need to do. But more importantly, or as important, is if you don't send your kid to school, you could be sent to court for truancy. And right now, we don't want anybody to be in court. We do want to avoid all of that at all costs to make sure that people are safe. The other thing, a lot of people, when we do these Know Your Rights, a lot of people will, how does it affect me? I'm a citizen, I'm okay. And the reality is that at the end of the day, this is gonna affect all of us. If the Houston economy starts hurting, we're all gonna start hurting. If schools start shutting down because they're not getting funding, it's gonna hurt a lot of our neighborhoods. The other thing is that as there's a law here or an executive order that was passed by the governor that's called Operation Lone Star. And Operation Lone Star, they're expanding it now to other cities or to other jurisdictions. And basically it talks about that you can be detained if you're transporting or trafficking undocumented people. And where you're like, well, I don't do that. Well, if somebody happens to be in the car and they happen to be undocumented, you can get charged with that. 75% of people detained under Operation Lone Star are U.S. citizens who were caught in the car with an aunt, an uncle, somebody, an employee of theirs, somebody that just happened to be in the car with them. And a lot of the times people are like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, nothing happens, right? So I was actually taken really aback a couple of weeks ago when we were doing a presentation at the UH Law School, and one of the attorneys that are working on one of these cases was saying that the probable cause as to why, and this is a real document that was written by the DPS, a real report that was written by the DPS. The reason why they pulled the car over was they said that it smelled like immigrants. It smelled like illegal immigrants. I see a lot of you shaking your heads because that's preposterous, right? So the things could be changing, and we're not saying that all law enforcement is doing. We actually worked with law enforcement under when the congressman was mayor. We had meetings. We wanted there to be community police collaboration as witnesses, as victims of crimes, just in regular neighborhoods, because we believe that having those or breaking those bridges not only makes the undocumented community unsafe, it makes us all unsafe, because if somebody witnesses a crime and they're afraid to talk to police about it, then what happens now, right? And so we're facing tough times. This is all going to get probably worse as time goes on, and we're going to see our communities hurt more in a variety of levels. Now, it's important to know that people still have rights. We are doing these Know Your Rights trainings all over the city, and the biggest misconception is that people are like, well, you're just letting undocumented legal people know about their rights. No, these are laws that all of us should know. These are rights that all of us should know in case we have any interaction with police or federal agencies. So it's important to know that the other big thing is that a lot of businesses are calling and they're asking for like what happens if ICE comes to a restaurant or something like that. We do offer trainings on those specific scenarios. We also make sure that people know what to do during traffic stops. And one of the complexities of that is at the end of the day, we still want, if somebody's just gonna get a ticket, we don't wanna escalate those situations. But if law enforcement starts being more intrusive and starts asking about documentation and things like that, then we hope that people will know their rights and refuse to answer those questions. And it's working. Tom Holman, the new director of ICE, was saying that operations in Chicago weren't as successful as they would have liked because too many people knew their rights. And I think that's a win for people who are just working, who are here trying to make a living, who are here trying to provide for themselves and their families, and who are our fabric of what makes Houston, Houston. So we do have the Know Your Rights cards. They're in here somewhere, but there's a lot of pockets in these things. So, but we do have the Know Your Rights cards, and the Know Your Rights cards talk about the Fifth Amendment, which basically is the right to remain silent. And like I said, these are cards that are good for anybody to have. So before I go any further with that, we are going to bring up our attorney, Janelle Robles, and she'll explain to you a little bit more about what rights we have as citizens of the U.S. or non-citizens of the U.S. Anybody living right now in the U.S. has constitutional rights. And so she'll explain a little bit more about that, and then after that, I think we're going to take questions afterwards to be able to talk more about the lay of the land. So, Janelle.
Good evening. My name is Janelle Robles. I am a criminal defense attorney. I also practiced a bit of immigration law before I worked in the criminal justice system. And I've worked on all sides of the criminal justice system here in Harris County. First as a prosecutor, then a public defender, then I was an appointed magistrate judge, and now I'm back to being a defense attorney. So as a defense attorney and as a bilingual Spanish-speaking attorney, the vast majority of my clients are Spanish-speaking immigrant individuals. That's because we just don't have enough attorneys that are Spanish speakers, so that's the population that I serve. So everything that's going on right now is very relevant to the work that I'm having to face every single day with my clients. The number one thing that I emphasize to everyone is the importance of our constitutional rights. The U.S. Constitution, I would say, is the most important legal document in this country. It is our fundamental rights. Everyone needs to know the constitutional rights. Whether or not you have legal status or you don't have legal status, every individual in U.S. territory is protected by the U.S. Constitution. The relevant constitutional amendments, and let me just ask real quick. ¿Hay alguien aquí que solo habla español? ¿Sí pueden alzar la mano? All right, so I guess ¿alguien solo español or no? Okay, got it. Perfect, so I can just speak in English. Number one, Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Everyone has the right to remain silent when an officer or an ICE agent is questioning them. If you are stopped by law enforcement in the state of Texas, an officer can ask you to identify yourself. And you must provide your name and your date of birth. If they ask you, you must also provide your address. However, if you do not have a driver's license, you don't have any other ID, you don't need to provide that. If you do have another ID, and it is a US or Texas ID, go ahead and provide that identification, even if it's expired. Because I would much prefer a person to get a Class C ticket as opposed to something worse. So they have an expired driver's license or expired ID, I think that's better. However, if you have any documentation that would go to show that you are not a US national, for example, a Mexican matricula or a foreign passport, probably not a good idea to tip off that you are from another country. Just state your name, date of birth, and if they ask you as well, your address. For ICE, however, you do not need to provide any information. You don't need to volunteer any information. ICE has the burden to prove that you don't have immigration status. They have the burden to prove that you were not born in this country, and they have the burden to prove which country you are from. So don't make their job easier by telling them that you are from another country. The Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Everyone has the right to an attorney. If you are facing criminal charges and you are indigent, you have the right to request a court-appointed attorney for free. If you are in immigration proceedings, if you do not have the money to pay for an attorney, you have to hire your own attorney. You are not entitled to an appointed attorney. But you can always say, I would like to speak to an attorney. Even if you don't have your attorney with you or attorney's name, make sure you indicate, I want to speak to my attorney before I continue speaking to you, to immigration or police, etc. Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. If you are stopped by the police, if the police ask you for consent to search your vehicle, you do not have to give consent to search your vehicle. So if they ask you, you say, I respectfully decline to give consent to search my vehicle. If you are at home, they must present an order signed by a judge before they may enter your home. However, you can waive your right and give them consent to search your home. But again, you must exercise your right that they do not have consent to enter your home. Your home is a very private sanctuary that is highly protected by the US Constitution and by federal and state laws. You have the right for police not to enter your home unless they have an order that is signed by a judge. When individuals who do not have legal status that are at home, they can face two types of orders. An administrative order, detention order, or an arrest warrant or somewhat a judicial order, right? The judicial order is the one that would allow the police to come inside your home. The detention removal order not signed by a judge, it does not allow them to enter the home. If the judicial order has the name of a particular individual, then if that person is home, let that individual know and they can turn themselves in as opposed to allowing law enforcement to come into the home and then other collateral individuals are then detained and arrested. So that's why we want to avoid that as well. Let's see. If you are stopped by police, you want to make sure you don't have any fraudulent documentation in your vehicle. no fake social security cards that somebody may have gotten at the flea market, or a driver's license or ID or whatever. You know, sometimes young people want to go to the club and so they get their ID saying they're 21 and up or something. Gotta make sure there are no fraudulent documents in the vehicle. And just briefly from my personal experience, since all the cases that I deal with are felonies, there's such a misconception as to, as someone who worked on all sides of the criminal justice system, everyone commits crimes, not just immigrants. And actually, I believe there are studies that show that immigrants commit less crimes than US-born citizens. And I've seen individuals from every nationality, every culture, every walk of life, and every citizenship status. And so, sadly, what I'm seeing now is immigrants that are being arrested for behavior that is not considered violent. Sadly, I had a client a couple weeks ago who was a day laborer who was arrested and then charged with a violent felony. Thankfully, we had some reasonable prosecutors and judges who saw the lack of credibility in that case, and we were able to resolve it. The day laborers have a First Amendment right to solicit employment if they'd like, right? So anyway, everybody needs to be educated on our constitutional rights to remain silent, to request an attorney, to not speak to law enforcement if not volunteer extra information, and to know when someone is allowed to be in your home and not allowed to be in your home. If you have, and this is just general information, of course, these are the general rules and general laws. There's always exceptions to the exception to the exception. And if anybody has any other question, I'm happy to speak to you after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. And thank Attorney Janelle Robles again, because at the last minute, she changed her schedule to be here this evening. As you can tell, quite capable, quite able. And so I really want to thank her and appreciate her for being present. Give her a hand one more time. Now, I told you about the Taxpayer Data Protection Act. Everybody got that one? Now, the bill that I filed that protects churches, schools, hospitals, that is the Protecting Sensitive Location Act. Protecting Sensitive Location Act. And pretty much the bill codifies what used to be the practice. Children can go to school, safe place. They can go to church, safe place. Go to a hospital, safe place. This, by law, will protect those locations. So someone comes to Spring, Independent School District, safe place. Bel Air, Houston, Aldine, Klein, safe places. So that's the Protecting Sensitive Location Act. Please call your members of Congress, the White House, Democrats and Republicans alike. And because one thing I want to say to you, don't just call friendly folk, okay? You're preaching to the choir. Call those who are not as friendly. That's important. And then bear in mind, the ultimate power in this country rests with you all. Don't lose your voice, okay? Martin Luther King said something that I like. He said, a person starts to die the moment he or she becomes silent on things that matter. There are a lot of things that matter, so don't lose your voice. Okay, we've done a lot of talking. You heard a lot from us. Whatever your concern may be, question, please stand up and voice your question, and we will address them. And there's a mic coming to you. right back there.
Test.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am concerned about my family member that is undocumented, came here on a work visa, allowed it to expire several years ago, stayed in my home. If anything were to come about by him staying in my home, will I be in jeopardy of any kind of anything?
Unless, so I wanna go back to what's happening, right? So one of the only ways that immigration can come to your home right now is if that person already has a prior order of deportation, or things like that. Now, whether people wanna press charges under like the Lone Star, Operation Lone Star, or things like that, it's different. But right now, that seems to be as long as they're not committing any crimes, as long as they don't have an active warrant of deportation or things like that, then it's something that is maybe a minimal risk. Now, it is important, one of the things we haven't talked about, but it's important to talk about now, is that it is important to have a plan in place for that person. You don't want to start looking for an attorney once you're detained. You want that person to, number one, go try to consult with an attorney to see if there's anything that person can do to adjust their status. And the sidebar is make sure that they're a qualified, honest attorney, because unfortunately right now there's a lot of attorneys that are taking advantage of the situation, and get 2 or 3 opinions to see if that person may qualify for something. The second thing is for that person to put a plan in place together. If they have children, if they have financial plan in order, and we at Fiel can help guide families through that process to make sure that it's done right. But if immigration comes to your home and knocks and they just want to check it out, you do have the right to not open the door, to make sure they have a judicial warrant, and to not provide any information that could be put yourself or your family member in jeopardy.
In the event that someone did come to the door and knock, I'm not there, and they answered by mistake, have it, and now they end up going to ICE, I guess, wherever they go. Then will it be any kickback on me? Still,
It's complicated because we don't know what they would be charged with, or I mean, first of all, same thing, it's an unlikely scenario that they'll just come. And second of all, it's whether somebody wants to file like an additional charge, something, there's really no way of knowing. But I know that the congressman is streaming this. I'm assuming you guys are gonna leave it up. So I would encourage your family member to watch this video, and to make sure, and the other interesting thing about this too is to have conversations with the children, because we had a case a really long time ago that ICE did come knocking at the door, and the kid opened the door. And so you have, as sad as it may sound, we have to have these family conversations with everybody in the family.
If they do have a warrant signed by a judge for that particular individual, for example, if it's a criminal arrest warrant, then, and that person is in your home and you answer the door and you lie and indicate that they are not there, you could be charged with up to a felony for hindering apprehension of prosecution and that sort of thing. That is, again, if they have a particular arrest warrant for that particular individual. Only criminal, right?
thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you, Congressman Turner, thank you, Mr. Cesar, and thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the other thing we haven't talked about, but I think it's important to talk about, whether it's police or ICE or any encounters, you do have the right to record as well. And your recordings are protected in your First Amendment rights, and they cannot be deleted. And so it's, as long as you're not hindering with the investigation, like you don't want to have your phone, or be too close or things like that, interfering with the duties of a public official, then you are allowed to record. And just in case in the future that recording can be used to detect any anomalies or evidence or anything like that.
Another question. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adiambo Kwan, and today I'm an immigrant. I have two questions. The first question is, when we talk of illegal immigrant or undocumented immigrant, I would like to ask, if you have already filed your paperwork, but you have not yet reached a point where you have your work authorization or your social, where does that leave you? What if in case you're approached by the ICE or the law enforcement, what do you do? Or what would you say? Are you legally, are you in the process, are you subject to, are they able to arrest you? Can they say that you don't have your documentation? Or how would somebody who is in that situation act? I have the second question is, I know there's a lot of information that's going around in the internet right now, but one that has come that is really interesting to note is that I've heard that now in domestic flights they're able to stop you. I hear they're teaming up with the TSA and are able to stop you and ask for your legal status. I just wanted to clarify, is that really what is happening? And what would you do in such a case? Then I have a third question.
Well, let's deal with these right now.
Because your first question was actually a two-part question. Number one is the Attorney Robles explained if it's with law enforcement, like if you ran a stop sign or you might have been going too fast, then you wanna just take the ticket and not escalate that situation. And I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned, but it's important to remind everybody, is you want to make sure that those interactions are as calm, and even talking to your children about staying calm in those situations is really important, because we don't want to escalate those situations. Now, if it's a federal agent, and to your question about where that triggers, unfortunately, officers have a lot of discretion as to whether they can take you in if you're in the process. And usually the rule is that you don't really have status until you've been granted status, either through like a work permit or a temporary permit or something like that, or a green card. So you may want to carry copies of whatever it is that you're filing for, but at the end of the day, it's at officer discretion whether they arrest you or not. I don't know if you want to add something, or Alain, if you want to add something. Alain is with our team. I'm gonna have him come up because he always makes sidebar conversation, but he needs to be up here too. So, yes.
Just the recommendation is you need to talk to the person need to talk to the lawyer right now to make sure what exactly needs to do with the specific case. Because when you are in the process on some benefits of immigration, and the last paperwork you receive say, if you are an order of deportation, you need to talk to the judge to say you are in this process, to before you leave the country, you can come back and don't basically mess it up with your benefits. So you need to check the letters with the USCIS to make sure you find in that case what you can do. Because yes, we have a testimony like the DPS stopped one person in Cleveland, Texas. Behind the DPS is the immigration, and the DPS identified the person who's driving, and it's another person who is applying for another benefit. So the ICE officer coming, taking custody the person who's driving because that's the target. And when the other person, the passengers show the paperwork, say, okay, for now we can leave you, but it's discretion of the officer. In that case, if the officer is take that person, he go through the process to go to the judge, immigration judge, and in that moment, that person he have a lawyer to make sure, and maybe 1 week or 2 weeks can basically do something to make sure don't mess with the benefits the person who's applying. But anybody in that situation who's just waiting a response needs to talk to the lawyer what do in that specific case.
Okay.
It's also really important to point out that, and I'm remembering things as we're going. If you knew anybody that's an LPR, a lot of us know people who have been green card holders for 10, 15, 20 years, and they don't want to naturalize because of whatever reason. Right now, we really encourage anybody who's eligible to become a citizen to file for citizenship. Because even as an LPR, even me that I have a green card, if I get arrested, I could still be put in proceedings. So I'm under strict orders right now from my wife to not do anything crazy, so I don't, I've been known in the past to get trespass warning, but that's a different story. So the second part, to your question, what was the second question?
About the T.
Oh, the TSA.
You do have,
Yes.
let me just say, you do have like.
TSA, all airports or all ports of entry are controlled by the Department of Homeland Security. So whether it was Trump or Biden or Obama or Trump or Bush, whoever it was, there's always a possibility that somebody can be detained at the airport if they don't have status. So right now, they're saying that they're going to be more aggressive with that, but that's a risk that people are taking if they are doing that. I don't know if you want to add something or if you want to.
So can anybody be stopped at the airport?
At
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
On top of that question is the real ID.
Yeah.
So the real ID is real. So if you're traveling without documents into the United States, and some people go to Puerto Rico or Hawaii, need to be careful, because if a marshal is in the airplane or somebody between the waiting room to aboard the plane is asking for papers or for your real ID, if you don't have, you're gonna be detained. And that's the truth. And this is something like immigration can do, because the law say 100 miles from the border, and for the airports and port entries, anybody can be detained.
Yeah, I know historically people, some folks without status have felt that there have been some more liberty to be able to travel within the U.S. domestically, flights, et cetera. But I think now there is a higher risk, and I think it is good to just kind of take some precaution and not travel to avoid some of those dangers.
And certainly no fraudulent papers.
Correct.
You do not want to travel
Because that would be
with fraudulent papers.
tampering with government.
Okay.
felony. Mhm.
Another question.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Oh, right over there.
Hi, hello everyone, the people on the podium, and my U.S. Congressional, Sylvester Turner,
Yes, ma'am.
C18.
Yes, ma'am.
We stay strong. All right, I'm also precinct chair, 0550, and I'm a founder of Cannabis Reform.
Yes.
And on the board of Our Revolution, Harris County, also Our Revolution National. So I'm a judge. Just wanted to let you know, guys, I'm busy. So that's why I flew in here last minute. This is my first time being at a town hall. And so this is really great and fantastic to see a lot of people here to represent for their community, you know, and I appreciate seeing that. I didn't know what the topic was going to be. I had a question for you.
Sure.
But it doesn't involve what we're talking about tonight, but I would like to ask the young lady a question first. And then the second question, am I able to do so?
Yes.
Okay, great. The first question is just a small one about the no-knock, you know, the way when they kick in the door without notification. With the group called Pure Justice, I'm also a member with them. And that's
Well,
one
that's a
thing.
great organization.
Yes, and I fight with them. We were on a case where Well, they kicked the door in. They were looking for drugs and they couldn't find anything, not even in the car, And so he was arrested and his girlfriend was there. She was so scared. She, urine on herself, they threw her in the bathroom on the floor. Everybody was traumatized.
And that's a pending case?
Yes, ma'am. And it's been, I think, over 10 years. My God.
Mhm.
That it hasn't even came to court yet. And we keep going, they keep resetting. This is not in Harris County. I forget the town, it's very small, And so I was amazed when we went to court. It was just something different than what we do in Harris County.
Mhm.
But just wanted to know, how does that go? And are we doing something to do that? Are you watching the cases, kind of seeing what's going on and make sure the policemen are accounted for what they've done?
So generally speaking, in terms of my practice so policy-wise, I'm not really involved in policy kind of work, right? There's definitely a lot of work that still needs to be done in the policy area, and I think some more collaboration that needs to happen between defense attorneys and lawmakers, policymakers, to kind of bridge the gap on what we're seeing on the ground and what kind of changes we need, right? But personally speaking, right, as a criminal defense attorney, we're always reviewing the conduct by the law enforcement to see if it was lawful and if it complied with Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure.
Okay.
And make sure that they have a warrant. And gratefully, a lot of law enforcement now have the body cam videos, right? So we're able to determine whether or not their behavior was proper under the Constitution. So that's kind of generally what we review, what I review personally in my work. But yeah.
Especially with the court date being just pushed back and pushed back, pushed back.
Yeah, I mean, that's because it is a pending case, and because that individual likely has an attorney. That's something that needs to be, and such a specific case needs to be discussed with that attorney in terms of how to move forward. Obviously, if you're not happy, you can always consult with other attorneys to see what their opinion and legal analysis is. But my recommendation when someone has a pending case, I don't give any legal advice. I always refer them back to their attorney just because it gets complicated with ethics and that sort of thing.
Okay, well, I'll give them that small advice.
Thank you for your work with the nonprofit, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Sure, you're welcome. And the next question is from my Congressman.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't understand.
And I know I am working to,
Yes,
I know I'm working to set up a meeting with you. My chief of staff is right there in front, Marlette Hunter,
Chief of Staff, with you.
right there. So we'll set up a meeting.
Okay. Actually, this is actually a different subject today. I know you're very surprised about that. But I'm with, I'm sorry. Our Revolution National and also the Citizens Action Team. And we're here to speak with you about opposing tax cuts for the wealth. Okay. Prioritizing the wealth over working Americans. Tax cuts for the rich primarily benefits the top 1%, while everyday Americans struggle with rising costs for housing, healthcare, and education. Also opposing cuts to Medicare and SNAP, which a lot of people are hungry, going to pantries, starving, just trying to survive. That's very important. Ending fossil fuel subsidies instead of cutting essential programs. The U.S. spreads tens of billions of dollars subsidizing fuel fossil companies, some of the most profitable corporations in the world. This money should go towards health care, food security, and clean energy, not propping the outdated industries. And last but not least, cutting the bloated Pentagon budget instead of social safety net. The U.S. spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. So basically, I'm asking you, as you know, the Republicans are planning on cutting the social safety net and extending the tax cuts for the wealthy. Can you assure me that you will not support cutting Medicaid or SNAP, cutting taxes for the wealthy? Do you stand with that? Do you stand with us? We need Democrats to not negotiate and say, hell no. People come first, not billionaires and the wealthy.
And the answer is yes. I spoke about that in the first part of the meeting, about the cuts to Medicaid and to SNAP in order to achieve that $4.7 trillion that's needed to pay for tax cuts for those who are quite affluent. I spoke to this group earlier about that and asked them to call Democrats and Republicans alike and the White House to voice their objections. And of course, again, for people on Medicaid, you're talking about people in nursing homes, you're talking about children, people with disabilities, all of them are funded heavily by Medicaid, and Medicaid services 70 to 80 million Americans. So when you're slashing that budget, and that's the proposed budget from the Republicans that we'll be talking about later on over the next 2 weeks, it will create significant setbacks for vulnerable Americans. So I'm vehemently opposed to that, to the cuts. Okay? All right.
Thank you so much for your time and always appreciate the work that you've done all these years.
Thank you, appreciate that. Another question? Yeah.
And to add something to our friends, well, something that I want to remind people of is that in the past, Mayor Turner Congressman Turner, as mayor, was very big on transparency and things like that. And we did a lot with the Police Reform Task Force to hold everybody, the entire community, and also the police accountable, so that we could move forward as a community after George Floyd.
Okay, then we're going to take this question, and that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Yes, sir.
The congressman stated from Martin Luther King, and I'd like to make a statement, a quote from John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. So my wife and I came tonight. She's a retired 34 years probation officer, and I retired from Metro Transit. So Congressman, I grew up in the city gas area, Northeast Houston, and we came by invitation by Mazda to see if you need any help in the Northeast city gas area. Feel free to call. We're retired and we'd like to help you as best we can. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much. And I think that's a fitting way to end it tonight. There are 435 members of Congress. 435. It's a very small margin between the number of Republicans and the number of Democrats. We have a new president, and people are saying, he's saying, I received a mandate from the people in the last election. And things are moving quickly. Where you can help, not just me, but help your country, is to find your voice. Because it's one thing for me, Sylvester Turner, Congressman of the 18th, to be on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives and say something. It's another thing when you're using your emails, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, and writing and speaking to the people in the White House, to members of the House, and to members of the Senate. They need to hear from you. And let me say this, I'm not even talking about voting, because voting is not until next year. It's what happens now to next year. And the way things are going, thousands of people, federal employees, will lose their jobs. Now, you may say, that's them. If you have a Social Security question, who do you think you're gonna talk to? A federal employee. If you have an issue with Medicaid, Medicare, who do you think you're gonna talk to? You're not gonna talk to the president. You're not gonna, in many cases, talk to a member of Congress. You'll be talking to federal employees. If you have an issue on education, Department of Education, you're talking to a federal employee. On taxes, tax season, people have questions. Who will you talk to? A federal employee. Now let me tell you, when you start slashing thousands of federal jobs, you are hurting you. Because these are the people who benefit you. And I use Spring Independent School District as an example. You lose a lot of teachers. They say they cut the funding, superintendent. Children are not here for whatever reason, and you start losing teachers. Who educates them? The teachers. Okay? So, people need to hear from you. And that's why, when we're holding meetings, either in person or telephone town halls, please participate. And let your neighbors know, your co-workers know, this is not the time to be silent. On January the 20th, we inaugurated a president. We did not crown a king. I want you to remember that now. On January 20th, we inaugurated a president. We did not crown a king. I can't tell you enough how much we need you. I can't tell you how much. And I'll close with something my daughter said. And the reason why I ended up running. And I want to give proper respect to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Okay. But the reason why I am in Congress today, the reason why I was born and the reason I'm here, my daughter told me, she was pregnant at the time. Baby was due in the first week in August. And she said to me, Dad, I need you to go to DC to represent your grandson and to protect his future. Okay. I know, you've been mayor and state rep and all of that. But I need you to go. And not just my grandson, but every kid, every student, every adult, every person with disabilities, every person who doesn't look like me, come from where I came from, they need to know they have a voice in the U.S. House of Representatives. But we all need you. So tell your neighbors, your co-workers, your friends, your family members, I'm not asking you to go and vote 2 years from now. I'm asking you to stand up right now, because our country is at stake right now. And if it doesn't get to you, they slash Medicaid. If you know someone in the nursing home, where did that person go? Okay. Our children, where did they go? So that's my closing message. I know it's cold outside. I know it's cold. But let me tell you, better to travel through the cold to get the information that you need than to stay at home in the heat and lose your rights. Thanks, Senator Espinosa again. And thanks, Attorney Janelle Roberts. And I'll give yourselves a hand for being up tonight. Good to see all you guys. Okay? We'll have many more of these to come as we move forward. Okay, thank you all. Oh, I'm sorry, one thing. With my staff, all the members of my staff come through. In fact, Jose is spending a lot of time on his screen.
His office is here.
Jose speaks 5 languages. Okay? Margaret Hunter is my chief of staff. So Margaret, I'm going to introduce everybody.
Okay. Well, to my right, we have our district director, Europa Harris.
Europa has been working, she worked with Congressman Dean Green, then she worked with Congresswoman Celia Garcia, she worked with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and now she's working with Erica Lee Carter, who followed her mom, and now she works with me. So she knows Congress very well.
Right, okay. So here to my left, you have Jose Carrillo. He is actually officed in this building. So it's like Mazda Denon. He's actually officed in our 5th Ward office. Jessica New, she is in our downtown office.
And let me say, these 3 worked with me as mayor for 8 years. And their focus was on trade and international relations. Our district is so diverse, and people come from all over. I needed people who were specialists in international relations, young, aggressive, and smart. I was able to get that.
Shirley Martinez, she's in our Smith downtown office as well.
On casework, immigration issues, she's a specialist. So glad to have Shirley. Okay.
Alicia Shealy,
And Alicia is a precinct judge in the 18th Congressional District. And is exceptional. I am fortunate she said yes. So thank you.
our intern is actually with us tonight, and his last name is Chase Gray.
Chase is an intern. One of the things that I said I wanted to do was usher in and bring in this younger generation. He's come aboard smart, bright future ahead. He will be a part of a number of interns that will be working with me in Houston as well as in DC. And what I would say to you, if you know of people who are interested in interning, tell them to come see me. Because I've got interns for the summer that are coming from Harvard. And Harvard is picking up the bill. Okay. Because they see the importance of having their students working in a congressional office, that they're willing to pay the tax. And we're looking for other businesses, schools, companies to do the same. You don't develop leadership when you get the money. You start with your check, if not before. So, internship, mentoring that young generation, a high priority of mine. So,
And last but not least,
oh,
last but not least, the part of the A team is Jeff Septan.
Jeff has been with me for almost 12 years. And Jeff joined me when he was just graduating from the University of Houston. He's been with me when I was in the legislature, my 8 years as mayor, and now the Congressional office. So I'm fortunate. Marlette was my chief of staff as mayor for 8 years. And let me tell you how it works. Marlette is an urban planner, developer, built several apartments in the city, the owner, and I was able to lure her away from my business. No longer mayor, working with a big 9 CPA global firm, and was able to ask her to step away to continue to be chief of staff. The point that I want to make, this team represents the diversity of our city. I am proud of the DEI that we have on our team. Okay? Because this diversity makes the office more effective. Okay? No one person or group can represent the diversity of our community. Everybody needs to see themselves in these positions. Everybody. And when you add my DC staff,
Yes.
it is even more diverse. Okay? So we have to push back against a lot that's being spewed out right now. We have to push back. We cannot normalize stupid. Okay? We can't normalize it. And neither can we walk away from it. You have to meet it head on. I've got my friendship from Iran, seeking to liberate Iran. And strong supporters of Sheila Jackson Lee, strong supporters of myself. So it takes all of us to make it happen. Okay, I would love that.